right, man.
Okay.
So what's up? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good
So
to be here.
got Kent Wallace, the OG, one of the first guys that I remember ever doing lessons down here. Got him on the podcast and super excited, man. So just go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about you and kind of what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I am from this area. I went to high school at Reidland. I played American Legion baseball for Post 31. And then I went to SIU Carbondale for 2 years. And then I transferred and went to Murray State for 2. Ended up being drafted after my senior year by the Yankees in the 14th round. And then that was what started my path to the minor leagues, and eventually got fortunate enough to make the 40-man roster in 1996. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, a lot of years in the minor leagues. But it's good to be back home and helping out the youth around here. So
yeah, absolutely. So first thing you dropped there, Post 31.
Right.
So way back in the day, man, and I say way back whenever I was playing, Legion ball that's what it all was about.
Right.
That's what everybody wanted to play. You look forward to it. Travel ball was not really anything.
No, it wasn't. I think the Storm back then was just about it. Jim Grief was my coach for that team.
Yeah.
And then the next step was Legion Ball under Doc. Doc was my coach, and he did a lot of things to help me out. So he's the one that gave me a shot to make it between my sophomore and junior year in high school.
Yeah.
So I actually played 4 years of Legion Ball.
Yeah.
I even played after my freshman year in college. So.
Man, Legion ball used to be so dominant.
Yes.
I remember even back whenever I played, you had guys like Clint Tilford, Daniel Webb, Chad and Brock Wright, a lot of guys. I mean, that is where you went to play in the summer.
It was the best 18 players or so in the region. Plus, I think we drew from Lyon County at one point. So.
Yeah, and I think Lyon County is one of the lone survivors. They're still going. I think they have a Legion team, and then I think Madisonville has a team. But I want to say, man, when I was playing, it was Post 31 was kind of top of the food chain. I think very soon after I started, I think they actually went to the national championship or whatever. But I played for Post 236 out of Calvert.
Right.
I never played for 31, but a lot of the guys that I played with on the Storm played for Post 31. And I think, looking back to the time that I was playing, man, that Post 31 team was always stacked.
Always.
And, so who are some of the guys that you would have played with at Post 31?
I played with Tremaine Donald.
Okay.
Dax Mahan.
Okay.
The legend from Marshall County.
Yeah.
Stacy Dowell was also from Marshall County. Jamie Brown was a catcher. He's helping out with Crittenden County's program right now, I think so. We were loaded. We had George Joseph, who pitched at SIU as well. John Byer, who ended up pitching, I think, in an NAIA program, David Lipscomb for a while.
Yep.
Rob Carter, a left-hander from Graves County, who also pitched at SIU with me as a freshman. We were stacked. Everybody that played on that team played, I think, Division I or a high-level JUCO or NAIA program.
Yeah.
So,
it was just it was so competitive, and it didn't matter where you traveled.
Right.
It was good, and I guess I don't really know, man, when it dwindled away, but it's just all about travel ball now. And speaking personally, obviously we have travel ball teams, but with this, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I've tried to bring back some stuff locally through our fall league and our summer league to kind of have that Legion feel where you have your local kids playing together. Now, it's not always going to be all kids from Marshall County, all kids from Graves County, but just getting those local kids, because there's something to be said about it. I mean, you probably have a lot of memories, from those times, and it's from the guys that you went to high school with and the guys that, from surrounding counties.
Definitely. I always go back to my days in Little League and high school and Legion Ball. Those were the days where It was all about just going out and having fun, and it wasn't a job. The stress wasn't there, so you could just relax. Usually school was out at that time. So those days were the best because you could just relax and only focus on playing ball.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what it's really about.
You're right.
At the core, that is what it's about. And I think, you get caught up in getting scholarships and playing college ball and stuff. Man, if you ain't having fun, it's
a kid's game.
Yeah.
And I've made the comment before, like, in football, you have to be tough. You have to be strong, fast, or whatever. In basketball, you have to be tall, quick. But in baseball, the athletic skills definitely help. But that's not the bottom line. You have to perfect the skill set, and you have to love the game.
Yeah.
It's a kid's game. So you see all kinds of body styles, in the big leagues.
Yep.
Fat, tall, skinny, short. You can play. As long as you can play the game. It's not such the case in other sports sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm sure you get this too. And I don't know, how young typically do you work with? What's the youngest age typically that you will work with?
I get that asked a lot, and it doesn't really boil down much to age because I've had 6-year-olds that pay attention.
That's
and
right.
I've had 15-year-olds that don't.
That's right.
A lot of times those are the ones that think they know it all.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So it doesn't. What I usually do for the younger kids is do a one-time evaluation and see if it's going to be worthwhile. Usually I can tell if it's going to pay off or not. So,
well, and the reason I ask that is because a lot of times at your younger ages, 5, 6, 7, 8, and stuff, you get the parents will ask, what does he need to be doing? He needs to be out playing wiffle ball,
right?
Exactly. He needs to enjoy the game.
Give them 1 or 2 things and just say, hey, for the first year, hammer these things out, and come back and see me next year. I'll give you 1 or 2 more.
That is right.
So,
yeah, and I think one of the biggest things. And really, I say that I focus on this with younger ages. Man, I focus on it. I'm still focusing on it right now in high school, and I did in college. Until those guys can hold their balance and just be in control of their body, what are you doing? And I think there's a lot of athletic movers, and I think you cultivate that always. Never take away any sort of athleticism that a kid can do, but let's just get that energy that you're generating. And let's put it in the right direction.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think a lot of times, man, just going out and playing in the yard and playing wiffle ball. And I remember, Kent, when I was a kid, I felt like I learned how to hit the ball backside by throwing the ball up and hitting it in the yard, going and picking it up, doing it again.
It's a lot harder than it looks.
It is.
Hitting good batting practice or hitting infield practice is tough. There's an art to it.
Yeah.
You got to toss it up a certain, spot and everything. And I tell kids, if you want to work on a little bit quicker swing, toss the ball up just a couple inches above your hands and get to the ball. Get the barrel to the ball.
Yeah.
Because if you watch most people when they do infield practice or whatever, they'll toss it real high and allow for that big, long casting swing and hit it. So you can tell a coach that has, done it for a while on his technique when he hits infield practice.
Yeah. Yeah, so and I think I want to really kind of dive into that, to the instructional side of it, because I think you are a wealth of knowledge. I think when I was a kid, going back a little bit, I don't know if you remember a guy named Garrick Sullivan, but
yes.
I came to hit with Garrick once or twice at your place, and I remember leaving. I'm like, wow, that guy's really smart. And, I never really pitched. So I don't think, for whatever reason, I never really took lessons from anybody.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have. And I think at the end of the day, that's really why I think what we do is so valuable to communities. And a lot of times you don't realize it until a couple years down the road. And you've been doing this for so long now that you are really starting, I'm sure, and have for years seen the fruits of your labor, and I thought you did a great job back then with him, and I think you do a great job now.
Well, it's important, just like the player, that we grow as well.
Yeah.
And you can't accept where you are at the moment, and that that you can adapt and change as well.
Yeah.
The game has definitely evolved. It's morphed into a different, style and everything like that. And so there's still a lot of old school in me.
Oh, yeah.
As far as how to play the game and stuff like that. But also I have to be willing to accept new ideas and concepts. So I have learned so much, and I tell people this all the time, I've learned so much by teaching over when I played.
Yes.
You see the game,
yes,
so differently from a different perspective. And I tell all my students, I go, you'll probably learn more when you're not actually involved. Mm-hmm. Like if you're sitting out, you're on the bench, instead of letting your mind wander, looking in the stands and stuff like that, pick apart the game. Pick a buddy, and we used to do this all the time, and pay attention pitch by pitch and say, hey, after seeing that swing, what would you throw right here?
Yeah.
And that's how you learn. And it's just like the armchair quarterback sees the game from a different perspective, because you're not in the heat of the battle. Sometimes you get lost in that confusion, and your head's like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
But when you can sit back from a different perspective, you see the game a lot more clearly.
Man, you said a lot of good stuff there. So in a previous episode, I talked to a guy named Casey Brown that he played for the post grad, and now he's coaching at South Oldham, and he's doing some lessons and stuff like that. And I told him almost that exact same thing. I said, man, with instruction, you are going to learn so much more by teaching than you ever knew mm-hmm. as a player. And then with the seeing things from a different perspective, mm-hmm. when I was hurt, when I redshirted my freshman year, I felt like I developed so much more of a love for the game, mm-hmm. For the little small intricate stuff that you do. You take it for granted when you're playing every day. And I think, kind of taking a step back and being forced into a position where now you have to evaluate the game that you love from a completely new perspective. It does, man. It enhances your knowledge. It enhances your love for the game. It's honestly a beautiful thing. No, I don't want anybody to be forced into a position where they're redshirting because of injury.
Right.
But I think just enjoying the game, watching baseball, watching college baseball, watching pro baseball, watching the game at a high level, seeing how it's played, seeing the little things that's done, is huge, man, for the growth of not only us, but for the players and for everybody.
Definitely. When you have to sit out for injury or whatever reason like that, it hits you in the gut. To not be able to be out there with your teammates and go after it. So it kind of fuels the fire a little bit more. It makes you more hungry.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, man, it's and so kind of going back to the instruction side of it. So obviously over the years you've done a little bit of everything, I'm mm-hmm. sure.
Yeah.
And your primary strength is pitching.
Definitely.
So I think, a lot of the people that's going to listen to this are guys that have either come to you for lessons, mm-hmm. went to other people for lessons mm-hmm. and things like that. So I'm curious personally because I don't do pitching. Mm-hmm. I just feel like, actually, a lot of times I say you need to get in with Kent. Right. Because I just feel like their money is better spent with somebody else other than me, because I never personally pitched.
How much you?
I think at the end of the day, I want these guys, and you kind of touched on this, you want them to get their money's worth. You don't want them coming in if they're just swinging and that sort of stuff. And I feel like if somebody wants to learn how to pitch, you need to go to somebody that did it at the highest level possible. And I know that is not me, So when you're working with kids, what's some things that you see most often with youth kids mm-hmm. when they first come in?
All right. Well, a lot of times I think we take a lot of things for granted, like they know how to hold the ball properly.
Yeah.
And something so simple could screw, everything up. You could have a great arm action, use your body really well, but if you're not holding the ball in the right fashion, you'll struggle.
Right.
So that's where I start off with. I just want to see how they hold the baseball, the 4-seam grip versus the 2-seam grip. What's the purpose of each, and use the 4-seam as your building block. I don't care, what type of pitcher you're going to be. That should be the easiest pitch to control because it's not moving, and that should be your staple. Arm actions, that's another thing that I tend to focus on early because you want to try to avoid injury. Mm-hmm. So a good proper throwing motion, an arm action that's synchronized with the body is important. Right. What I typically see at a young age is kids focusing on getting the arm up real early in the delivery, and so they're kind of posing with
Up-
the ball
up here.
really,
Yeah.
really high, and they can't maintain that height,
Yeah.
and then it drops at the most critical point.
Yeah.
So, having an arm action that flows with the body is very important.
Yeah.
So, we do certain drills to enhance that, to get them a feel like walking into their throws, as opposed to standing sideways and maybe breaking out of the glove early. I have them usually walk into their throw. So they start their walk and then they break their hands and then throw, so that they get the body used to moving forward first instead of the arm. Just kind of like the Happy Gilmore drill in hitting off the tee. You walk up to the tee and then you hit off the tee just to get the stride going and the hands coming back when you swing. So it's the same thing.
So, and I love that. So you just kind of see how the kid works first, and then you work from there. And
everybody's different too. That's one thing that I've learned over the years, is that we can't cookie cut and we can't clone, because kids all are gifted in different areas. They all have different body styles. So you just have to learn to look at them. And what I've done in the years past, as opposed to maybe when I started, is I give a kid a chance to watch him and prove to me that your way doesn't work before I'm going to change you.
Right.
And maybe when I first started, I wanted to show them how to do it before. But then now I've learned to back off a little bit and just let them show me what they're doing, and then make little changes instead of trying to make everybody do the same thing over and over.
Absolutely. I think, that's huge. And we kind of touched on it earlier, but, some of these kids, man, are extremely athletic.
They are.
And I think you can take that away from them.
True. You can break them down. You can take a kid that's got good energy and momentum and athleticism and break them into drills so much that now they're choppy and robotic with everything.
Yeah.
So.
And, and I will say, I think, as a coach, I think sometimes, and I've learned this, I was a player that was not very, I've had coaches refer to it as cerebral. Like I was a caveman hitting. I was see ball, hit ball. Well. And I think there was some things, looking back at my swing mechanically, I definitely could have done better, but I just swung and I hit the ball. And I think, as a high school coach now, I've had to figure out that, and it's just like teaching, it's you've got to differentiate between each kid. Some kids, like I've got one kid in my mind right now. I can break him down and I can talk to him about mechanics, and he's going to ask me questions about mechanics, and he is all in on it.
Right.
And then there's some kids that's like, I just saw the ball,
You're exactly right.
And what are you working on the tee? Hitting the ball? No, man. Like, give me something a little bit more. Are we working on away? Are we working on low and in? What are we working on? I'm just working on hitting it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that a little bit. But I think as a coach, I've had to realize, okay, some kids want to be coached that way. Some kids do not.
You're right.
And one of the big things that, because we are diving in full force right now on learning zones and things like that, learning hot and cold zones, helping kids understand their weaknesses and their strengths. So there's a lot of growth happening right now at Marshall County, as a hitter. But I think, a lot of times you have to just kind of sit back and kind of be like, okay, look, this is what I'm telling you right now. This is what I want you working on in the cage. Understand that when you get to the field, it's see ball, hit ball. Yep. It is simplicity at 100%.
I think Yogi said you can't think and hit at the same time.
You can't.
And that's what you've got to trust, that all the work that you've put in on the side, in drills, soft toss, hitting off the tee or whatever, just like in pitching, and then when you get in the game, you want to just see your target and hit it. Yeah. And you don't want to be thinking about mechanics when you're on the mound.
No.
Yeah.
Competing. Yeah. And that's where you see, I think, especially at the high school level specifically, you're going to have athletes will prevail.
Yep.
Typically. The more athletic kids typically will have success, whether that's on the mound, in the field, hitting, whatever. When you get to college, and I've never played pro ball, so I think you will, I think from a pro ball perspective, I think you will have definitely more insight than me on this. But at the college level, everybody hits, everybody's athletic.
You're facing the number 4 dude every single time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, you have to really grow as a player. So, my question to you as a pitcher, and this is, just me never seeing you pitch, anything like that. Were you a guy that was super intense on the mound? Do you feel like you were pretty level-headed? How, because you see a lot of see a lot of different kids. You see some kids that are intense, that are, sorting guys when they strike them out, or so how would you describe yourself as a player, and kind of the development as a young guy up through pro ball?
All right, that's an interesting question, and it's almost the reverse of the way it usually goes. Okay, because I was a finesse location guy through high school and even college a little bit.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw the writing on the wall when I got to college. I'm like, man, I'm throwing, 84, 85. If I want to have a chance to play at the next level, I got to bump it up. And so
that's right.
Yeah, I decided, I'm going to start training a little differently.
Yeah.
Instead of being, off-speed type pitcher and just trying to hit my spots, I'm just going to freaking let the ball go.
Yeah.
And see what I can do. And the best thing that helped me was I played in a wood bat league, collegiate league, in the CICL. And I got there and I got in to pitch one inning. We had the first game of the year between my junior and senior year at Murray. We had about a 10-run lead and with an inning left or something like that. And they asked me if I wanted to pitch the last inning. I just got through watching our starter throw from the bench. And I noticed that his style of pitching was a little different than mine. I was more of a come up and stop, the balance point type guy.
Yep.
And he was more of a drifter. He would lift up and he had this big, wide base body. And, I said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try that. So
In the game.
Well, we had a 10-run lead, so I'm like, I can't blow a 10-run lead.
Give this a shot.
Probably.
Division I baseball, just give it a shot.
So I ended up throwing the inning, and after the inning, some of my teammates said, by God, how hard do you throw? And I go, I don't know, I was 85, 86 at Murray. And they go, no, dude, you were throwing harder than that. And I didn't think anything of it. So I'm walking to my car, and this guy goes, Mr. Wallace, can you come here for a second? And I turn around, and he says, I'm so-and-so, I'm a Cardinal scout. And, the draft has been over for some time now, but I was wondering, how hard were you throwing at Murray your junior year? And I said, I don't know, mid-80s. He says, we hit 91 13 times tonight. And I just, it blew my mind. And from that point forward, there's another scout there from the Scouting Bureau, Major League Scouting Bureau. And I think he filed a report with all the teams. So from that point forward that summer, I had 10, 12 scouts in the stands. I went 9-1 that summer with a 1-something ERA. And then the next year I get drafted. I was throwing low to mid-90s my senior year at Murray. Wow. I didn't have a great year at Murray. I threw hard, but I didn't pitch.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. The scouts wanted to see the stuff there.
Yeah.
And then they figure they draft arms, and then they can teach you how to pitch.
Yeah.
They throw you in the minor leagues, and you're like cattle. If the strong will survive at that point. So.
And I think there is some truth to that. I think that's a cool story, man. I mean, that is awesome. And I think, for you to go out mid-game in a Division I game and just, hey, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot.
I'm going to try it. It's like, I'm going to bring out the knuckleball or something. Yeah.
So did you stick with it then?
I stuck with that, and it was unbelievable. I ended up throwing, a ton of innings that summer.
Yeah.
And then quite a few my senior year at Murray. I probably threw 150 innings combined between my senior season at Murray and then that summer beforehand. So that helped build a lot of arm strength too.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, I hadn't thrown a ton of innings. I was a reliever at SIU. We had a great team there, by the way. We were 10th in the nation. We were 49-14. We went to Southern California for our regional tournament.
Wow.
Stanford. We played in Stanford for our regional, and we made it to the semifinals. And we were eliminated, I think, by either San Diego State or Fresno State. I can't remember which one.
Wow.
But Yep, I was a guy that just pitched in middle relief basically.
Yeah.
I threw about 30 innings there, and I transferred to Murray just because I felt like if I wanted to go beyond there, I needed to be a starter somewhere, and that's where I talk to a lot of my kids about going somewhere, where they know they're going to play, because I think there's a stat that says after their freshman year, that 78% or so of Division I players are somewhere else after that.
It's got to be very high.
Yeah. So I wasn't developed. It wasn't anything that they did. It was just I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I wasn't physically mature at that point. I was still a kid. I was 17 the first day of college.
Yeah.
I was a young freshman. So it took me more time to develop into the pitcher I could have been. So.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's I talk about this all the time, but the physicality of it is so important.
Yes.
And I was talking to a young guy today, 7th grader, and they need to understand that if you want to play, and I'm speaking at the high school level, if you, as a young guy, if you want to play at the varsity level, you need to have a varsity body, and that's not always the case, because some kids are already physically more mature than others.
Right.
But some are not. So you may have the best tools in the box.
Right.
But if you are underdeveloped physically, it's still gonna play. It's gonna weigh you down. And I think it's important that guys know that earlier.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we've really tried to introduce is just the physical part of it, trying to get guys in the weight room and stuff like that sooner. And I think for anybody that's listening, you don't need to be squatting 400 pounds at 12.
No.
You know what I mean? But control your body. You should be able to do pull-ups. You should be able to do push-ups. And you should be able to do sit-ups, right? And if you can't do those things, and body weight squats, I left that out. If you can't do those things, then you're not at baseline.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think, dude, even right now, my 8-year-olds, they come in, I give them homework, right? And I'm sure you give them drills and things like that they take on and do at home and stuff. Well, part of what they need to do for me is maybe 25 push-ups a day,
right?
Or maybe an even number. Let's do 20 a day. Do 10 in the morning, do 10 at night. And they come in the next week. Okay, did you do your push-ups? How was it? It was tough. I didn't get them all. Well, let's do it again this week. Do 10, And I think, when you think about it, and you do 20 push-ups a day for 7 days, that's 140 push-ups a week.
Right.
And
that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's just. And you know this, man, because you're a physical guy, and I know you take pride in that stuff. It's the consistency of it.
It is.
It's not what you do on Monday. It's what you do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
That's an interesting point. And I think we talked about this briefly before about how different people have different philosophies on working out and everything, and how you always want to be able to leave yourself some room to still do something tomorrow.
Right.
So instead of burning yourself out to where you have to have 2 or 3 days rest, you get to the point to where you're just about fatigued, and then you stop so that you can pick up tomorrow and do the same thing. And you're right. It's about volume at the end of the week. How much did you do this week versus, I did so much on Monday, and then, I really busted in the weight room, but I can't even get my car, until Thursday.
Yeah.
Because I'm so sore. So.
And I'm even kind of going through that a little bit right now, man. Since last November, I was going like 6 days a week.
Oh yeah.
I'm not doing 6 days a week.
You wait till you turn 50.
Yeah. I'm mixing in some cardio days here and there.
Cardio? What's that?
Right.
Is that Spanish?
Elliptical. Yeah. So not true cardio, but just mixing in some rest days. And since I have started doing the rest thing, I've noticed my strength has gone back up.
Yeah.
I kind of hit a little bit of a plateau, and now I'm taking some days off. And I text my wife today. I said, "Man, I feel strong."
It's weird how even if you're lifting or whatever, and maybe you're working, not taking enough rest between sets.
Yeah.
And then the phone rings or something, and so you talk for 5 minutes or so. Then you go back and do that last set, and you get 4 or 5 more extra reps just because you took enough time.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn this is what you'll figure out as you get older, Tyler, is you learn to listen to your body instead of listen to your head.
Yeah.
Because your head says, I can do this. And then, like,
that's right.
I used to catch, squatting down for all my students for first 10 years. And then I got to where I was sitting on a bucket.
Yeah.
And now I don't even do that.
Yeah.
Because you just can't do it. And
you got
can't,
a 9 square?
If I still, no, I don't.
Oh, dude, you need one of those.
I'm just trying to get guys to hit the target at all, much less a little square.
Yeah.
But no, I those days are over where I hop up and run and go get something now. So
yeah, well, I know you walked in the front of the compound there. I don't know if you saw my old man stick, but I had a parent. He got me and I would highly encourage you to get one of these. It's a 3-inch PVC with a rubber fitting on the end. And
I have that, and I used it for like a couple of days, and I don't know. I ditched it. I don't know.
I have not.
Because it takes an extra 3 or 4 seconds, and that's an extra 3 or 4 swings that a kid can take or pitches.
Hey, so what I've done now, what I've got
just like I have a pitching machine too.
Yeah.
I haven't used in 6 years. I still throw. I still throw. I love throwing to kids. I don't like even though I have an iron mic and it has the arm, there's advantages of both the jugs and the pitching machine, but I just like throwing,
It's therapeutic.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And I think with talking about the old man stick, my my strategy is I get the kids to go, because we got a little bit of flexibility in the net, so the balls get tied up. I'm like, hey, you guys go around, kick the balls out of the net, and then we'll pick them up together. And I'm just picking them things up, dumping them out. But yeah, talking about the machine and throwing and stuff, man, it is. I find it very therapeutic. And I think I've made the comment before. It's almost like my arm hits cruise control, and I feel like I can throw for days.
Yes.
But if I really wound up and did a pull down or did anything, I feel like I would tear everything in my arm. And there's been days because, man, as a coach, like, I feel like a lot of times these kids, they're hearing the same thing over and over and over and over. So a lot of times I like to get out there with them, I might take some swings at BP. I might get out there and take some ground balls. And there's been some times when I've fielded one and threw it, turned around, my fingers are tingling. I'm like, don't let them know. Yeah. Don't let them know. I made a good throw, wasn't much on it.
Yeah.
But everything on me was hurting. And I'm like, it's funny because I can do a showcase, and I have 50 kids and each kid gets 3 rounds of 5. Never feel anything. The whole time I'm just cruising. And then you cut one loose, man, and it's just donezo. Donezo. Yeah. But when's the last time you tried to just cut one loose?
A long time. A long time. Gosh. Yeah, it's been... I went to the Louisville Slugger Museum about 10 years ago. I was 45.
And they had the radar gun?
They had the radar gun. And I get up there, and they got these little Nerf. They're not real baseballs.
Yeah.
Because you could push in on them a little bit.
Yeah.
And I let one go, 83. I was pretty happy with that. And I hit 85 on the third one. And I probably couldn't lift my arm up for about a week after that. Yeah. It was stupid.
I love it, man. Hey, I got a radar gun on the hit tracks if you want to go out there and let one.
Those days are over. And you know what really is humbling? Where you're throwing and you think you're bringing it pretty good to a kid. He goes, "Is that your changeup?" No, that's my fastball.
That's all I got, man.
That's all I got.
Well, that's just like, I will do progressions. A lot of times we'll start on the tee, and then I'll go to side toss or drop drill, and then I'll do front toss, and then I'll start throwing, and then a lot of times I'll back up a little bit more, and I'll put something on it. It's funny because when I back up and I do what I think I'm throwing harder, they're way out in front.
Oh, yeah. I know.
I'm like, hey.
I know the feeling. Hey, 24 years ago when I started, I was throwing from full distance.
Yeah.
And now I'm down to about 25 feet.
Yeah.
Every year I get a foot shorter.
Yeah.
On my throw.
That's funny.
On what I throw from.
So. Hey, I'm right on them. I think that's the only way I can really get it in there fully. I know when I first came back and started working with Marshall County, with front toss, a lot of times, if I go overhand on front toss, if I go overhand, I'm sitting down, and if I'm going underhand, I'm standing up.
Yeah.
Right.
So you get on that same level, same plane.
Well, with those guys, the first year I was sitting on a bucket, and that is just man. About 3 weeks into practice, I guess it was my UCL started killing.
You're probably throwing darts.
I was.
Throwing over. That's why you see a lot of kids throw too.
Yeah.
They throw too close to their body, and they get their elbow out in front of their chest.
Yeah.
That's one drill I don't like, is that wrist flick drill.
I never really understood it
It
a
doesn't
lot.
Have you ever seen anybody throw with a completely stiff wrist anyway? Like that?
No.
Not really.
No.
So if you're going to do that, do it from out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of right here. You
That
never
is
want
true.
to. You never want to practice throwing, because I threw that way.
Yeah.
When I was 12, 13, 14, I threw from my ear.
Yeah.
And I remember.
I did too, actually.
Well, SIU's pitching coach, Kirk Champion at the time, saw me pitch at Callaway, and he mentioned something about the way I threw. He says, if you threw out away from your head, you would throw a lot harder.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I heard that.
Yeah.
And so I started working on that, and then, I gained about 5. I was throwing 78, 79, mostly my senior year.
Yeah.
And I got to 83, 84, just in time to get a chance to pitch in college.
Yeah.
Because he almost passed me up. He said, you battle, you really hit your spots, you locate, but we want to see 85 or so, you know?
That's crazy, because I remember my coach always, and when I got to college, my coach told me that I needed to follow through. And I'd never really been told that. Like, it was just never something that, because I had a pretty decent arm. But man, looking back on it, I was putting so much stress on my arm because I had no lower body. Like, I would get my energy moving, but then my roommate he said I was doing magic tricks. Like, my drive leg would kick behind my front and it would stop me, right? So it was like, boom.
So you're like skating, like you're skating.
Right, so.
There's some pitchers that pitch like that.
Man.
When they come off the rubber, they slide behind like you're bowling.
Right, that's basically what it was.
Yeah.
And, I had some tendonitis issues in my elbow and stuff like that, but man, I had to make a conscious effort. I mean, that was a movement that I had to beat, and it was a daily focus that I had to, and it felt so awkward in the beginning, because I'm like getting all this energy going towards the base. I filled it, and then I would just have to kind of walk it out, and then until finally I figured it out.
Yeah.
But it's like, you get used to these movement patterns, and you have to break them, and you don't even realize you're doing it.
And the longer it goes, the harder, the longer it takes. And that's why a lot of parents say, oh, they're too young to be doing this or starting lessons. It's not.
Dude.
Because some of the kids it's hardest is the ones that have played till they're 14 before they finally get some help.
Yeah.
And they've gone so far at that point, it's like, man, I don't know if we're ever going to get there. You know?
Dude, that's a great point. And the way because I teach now, I'm not in the classroom right now. I'm the discipline guy. But, I think one of the things about it or one of the analogies that I use, it's like a curve in math class, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you have a kid that's behind in math. Mm-hmm. If that kid doesn't get help, talking about early intervention, right?
Right.
If that kid doesn't get help until he's a sophomore in high school, how far behind is he?
Oh, yeah.
Right? But if that kid is struggling in first grade, and the teachers realize it, and they get the kid the intervention that he needs and get him the help that he needs, now he might be slightly behind, but he's closer.
Sure.
Right? You can't convince me that mechanics in a sport, in any athletic exercise or any athletic sport, that it's not the same. You get a kid in that's 9, and you're like, you know what? There's some stuff there, but he's flying open. His front hip's flying open. He's literally falling over when he swings. Mm-hmm. You can't tell me that by correcting that at 9, it doesn't affect his development at 12.
Sure.
And so, talking about how they kind of go through the development process, I'm so excited about the number of people in this area that is doing lessons and things like that, because as a high school coach, the kids that have learned what they're doing, both strengths and weaknesses, can have those conversations that other kids may or may not, right? And so when they get to high school, yeah, they may or may not know what they're doing, and it's my job to teach them. But those kids that already know, like, yeah, Kent told me this, or such and such told me this, that I have this issue. They can have that conversation and they can make those adjustments quicker because they've already been told and they've already been working on it.
A lot of it, this is nothing to do with the physicality part of it. Is just talking, the game, the terminology.
Yeah.
And that's where I tell them, and this is what's a little disappointing, is a lot of kids don't watch baseball.
Yeah.
They don't watch games on TV. I go, did you watch that game last night? They go, what game? I go, did you watch the World Series? Who played in the World Series this year? They couldn't even tell me, who played. And I said, man, you're missing out, because that's where I learned a lot. My eyes would be glued to the TV.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, with instructors, there are going to be a lot of things. And just talking about me and you, there's going to be a lot of things that we are saying the same thing a different way.
Yeah.
And I think, you talking about having that conversation, one of the main things that I talk about is their launch position, right? Being able to establish it, being able to have a conversation about where they're at their launch position, right? A kid that can have that conversation, to me, is ahead of somebody that has no clue, right? No, that other kid can learn without a doubt. But if I can talk to a kid about, okay, when your foot lands, your hands need to be back, your head needs to be center, you need to be locked and loaded and ready to pull the trigger, right? A kid that doesn't know what their launch position, doesn't know what you're talking about past that, And I think just starting that knowledge sooner is so beneficial. And in a complex movement like pitching, man, I took one pitching lesson with a guy named Andy Beal.
I know Andy.
Yeah. Y'all about the same age?
He's younger.
So he
was in the Yankee organization as well.
Yeah, yep. His dad worked with my dad, I think.
Gary Beal.
Yeah, and he was just in town.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, does Tyler pitch? And so I went. I think we might have actually went to Reidland or somewhere. But anyways, he basically just taught me the fundamentals. Wind up, stretch. That's it. But the understanding of where you're supposed to be at what points and stuff like that, man, it's such a complex movement and there's so much that's going on. It takes a different person to teach it.
It's both in pitching and hitting, there's certain things, there's absolutes, with everybody.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways of getting there, to where you are when your foot lands.
Yeah.
Everybody's pretty similar in pitching when they land with their arm position, unless you throw, submarine or sidearm or something like that. But, how you get to that point is going to vary from pitcher to pitcher. It depends on your build. Just like, you remember Tim Lincecum?
Yeah.
The freak. He's about 5'10", 165 pounds or whatever.
Had a hammer.
Had a 7 foot stride.
Yeah.
And just like a rubber band. He had to rely more on momentum to get his power. He didn't have the stature of Wainwright, like 6'7", where he had a short stride. Wainwright's stride was about 6 feet.
Yeah.
So utilize what you're given. If you have size, if you have height, don't take away from that. You're probably not a guy that needs to sit low in your lower half to, be on the same plane as a shorter pitcher.
Right.
So use your height to your advantage and throw downhill a little bit more.
Yeah.
If you're a shorter, base guy, then that's the type, where you're going to sit into your legs a little bit sooner in your delivery to enhance what you're given. So you gotta realize, what, like I said earlier, what God gave you,
right,
and try to just utilize it to the best of your ability. So.
Well, and I think one thing that you started doing that I'm all about is the video stuff.
Oh,
it's so important.
Well, let me tell you, when I first started the video, and I started when I started teaching, I did video the very first year. but we had the over-the-shoulder
That's
camera
right.
that fed into the VCR.
Yeah.
And then you had to rewind the VCR VHS tape. Mm-hmm. And it took the whole session to look at 3 pitches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you go to the handy cam, the little one with the little disc.
Yep.
And then finally the hard drive camera that would feed into your computer.
Yeah.
And then now finally the iPad or iPhone.
Yeah.
Which now, that's what has sped up the progress. I think a lot of the athletes today is the ability to, right after a couple of swings or a couple of pitches, go to the video room, look and see what you're doing. And then you could go and make improvements right away instead of having to wait, so long. So that's the positive side of technology today.
Oh man, it is so beneficial. And you when I say you're an OG, man, you've been doing that since the beginning.
Yep.
And with that hit tracks,
it's hieroglyphics.
Oh man, that's right. That's funny. With that hit tracks, part of it was you could buy a camera that synced up to it. And now they've got it to where you can sync up multiple cameras, but it's a high frame rate camera. So the kid is swinging. It's giving them real time feedback from a digital perspective on where the ball's going. And then in the corner, which I've actually switched it, I've got the digital layout of the field in the small corner. And then I've got the point of contact in the bottom right, and then I've got the video feedback, big screen, right? So when a kid swings, automatically he knows where he hit the ball in relation to the plate. So if we're talking about hitting, if we're working on hitting the ball backside and letting the ball get a little bit deeper, then he can see if he's hitting it there or if he's hitting it out in front. He can see where the ball went, the exit velo, the launch angle, all that stuff. And then he's getting video feedback immediately. Man, it's so important for them from an accountability standpoint. So, you're talking about real versus field.
Well, it doesn't lie. The camera doesn't lie. It shows you where you are. And I'm guilty as anyone. I'll say, well, let me show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And then I'll do it. And then I'll go look. I'm not really doing it that great. You know?
Yeah.
You feel like you're doing certain things and you're so used to these certain positions and stuff like that. And when you're asked to do something beyond what you're normally used to, it's tough making those. And that makes me a little bit more humble and a little bit more patient with my students.
Yeah.
Because I go, it's not that easy,
Well, are you on Twitter, X?
Yeah.
So a lot of hitting gurus, pitching gurus out there. And I think one thing that is so important for people to understand, there's a lot of instructors out there that actually have a really good understanding of what they're doing. But I think some of them are out of touch, so to speak, with what's actually happening. You know what I mean? So like, for example, if I'm a guy that's trying to teach kids, if I'm trying to teach an undersized high school kid how to hit like Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
That might not be practical.
Probably not.
You know what I mean? If you're a small athletic mover, probably need to watch guys more like Mookie Betts, right? You need to learn how to get the most of what you got.
Exactly.
And video is the best tool. And I, a lot of times I'll ask guys, who's your favorite player? Cody. I get a lot of Cody Bellingers. Somehow. I don't know why. For some reason, I don't get a lot of Aaron Judges, which he's my dude, man. I love watching that guy hit. But you get some Mookie Betts and stuff like that. And I think that it's important that they see comparisons of themselves next to those guys. And you made a good point about you can't cookie cut.
Right.
But there are absolutes.
Yeah.
Your hands need to be in a certain area.
If you look at Mookie, if you look at Judge, if you look at all those guys, when they're down, their hands are back.
Bingo.
They're very similar.
Yep.
And I remember seeing a video overlay of Chapman, who was the third baseman for the A's, Matt Chapman. And they did an overlay of his swing and his throw from third base. And you couldn't tell the difference. The positioning was so similar as, their arm position and everything. So it's all about what works best for you to get you where you need to be, and you see like guys like Altuve, who's the smallest player. He's all over the batter's box.
All over it.
He's got to be that way, or else he's not going to hit the ball the infield.
Yeah, and he can hit it hard.
He can hit it hard, 450-something feet.
Yeah.
And then you've got like guys like Pujols, who's got the size, who had the size that could spread out in a wide stance, pick up his heel, put it down, boom.
Yep.
Same
Soto.
Same result.
Yep.
Same result.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be adjustments and things like that you've got to consider and just get the most of what, you have. So.
Yeah, and I think, it's our job to just help them along that process. And that's kind of what we're going through right now at the high school. We're talking a lot about zone hitting and, developing an approach. And it's like I kind of touched on, once you get to a certain level, everybody's athletic. I feel like Marshall County specifically, we have a really good group of athletes. So does McCracken County, so does Graves County, so does a lot of counties, right? So what are we going to do to differentiate ourselves from those guys and stand apart? And we have to develop an approach. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that approach, but it's important that they understand it. And part of that is them diving into what their strengths and weaknesses are as individuals, so that then they can apply those to help the team.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And, I think it's just kind of helping them through that process because they're young. They don't know. And the younger you go, the less they know, and the more we have to figure out how to get that point across. You know what I mean? But
You guys look good out there.
Thanks, Dad. It's all paying off.
But yeah, so kind of flashing back, who was your coach at SIU?
It was Itchy Jones. To start. Yep.
So they have an awesome setup at SIU Carbondale. So they've got Itchy Jones Stadium, right? But because they've got a couple different layers to their setup, right? Like they've got their clubhouse is named, their field is named, and then their stadium is named, right?
Abe Martin Field.
That's right.
Yep. Itchy Jones locker room, I think, and then the stadium.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and I've kind of talked about this before, but because they're the Valley, right? And they've been in the Valley for a while. And I don't know 100% what their off-field stuff is, but their field is awesome.
Yeah.
They were actually one of the first around here to get turf.
And they just replaced it a year or two ago. So
they
got a new turf. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
They I go up for the reunion, alumni weekend every year.
Man, you got it made. You get to go to Murray State and SIU Carbondale for alumni.
And then
week.
last year they were playing Murray.
No kidding.
At SIU. So yeah.
On the alumni day.
Yeah, on alumni day.
Wow.
But when I went to Murray, they weren't playing SIU. So,
yeah.
But it's cool to be able to go to both. And
so what do you think about Murray going to the Valley?
It's a tougher conference for sure. But they're holding their own.
Yeah.
I mean, and Dan's done a great job.
He has.
Them. He has.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of enthusiasm and man, they're athletic.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you were talking about. I went up there for alumni weekend and walked in their weight room. There was a rain delay, so I got to go in, and man, these dudes are just jacked, every single one of them. And we had some guys that were very athletic, when I was at Murray, but they're still every single one of these guys. You could tell they're hitting the weights big time.
Sure, so, it's their job.
I know.
Yep. And that's, and I tried to stress that, we've got one that's there right now, and that's Reese Oakley. And did you ever work with him?
I had his older brother, Evan.
Evan.
I think I had Reese maybe when he was younger. I think he came with Evan some.
So they are very similar in their work ethic. And physically, I knew
Yeah, they get after it.
That he was going to be
yeah.
fine there.
Yeah.
Because I can promise you, I bet you there's some sophomores there that aren't as big and strong as he is.
Yeah.
And Evan is a brute now. And, he's at Kentucky Wesleyan, and he has had an incredible career.
Yeah.
But Reese, if he was underdeveloped physically, I would have been concerned about him going there. But, man, I knew that he would do well, regardless of what level he went to, because he was physically there. And I think he's going to help him. I don't know. I messaged Skirka the other day, just checking in on him. Hey, how's my boy doing? And he said he had done good, and so I'm excited to see what that happens. But I think the expectation a lot of times for kids coming out of high school to go to Division I, man, especially now, you're not going against another 17-year-old. You're going against a 24-year-old, and that age is only going up.
Yep.
So it's just, I think Division I baseball is strong, and I think it's getting stronger. But so as a guy that's been around the game for a long time, how do you feel? What's your opinion on kind of the state of the game right now at the college level, at the pro level? How do you feel like it's changed? How do you feel like it's stayed the same?
Well, like I said, you definitely see the difference in the athletes today. A lot more athletic. It's a lot more power oriented. Small ball is not such a big thing anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think there needs to be some type of almost like mesh between. I think there's two less of small ball in the major leagues.
Yeah.
I think they could bunt, move some guys over a little bit more, and steal a little bit more.
Yeah.
And they're starting to do that a little bit more just because of the rules. The limited times you can throw over.
Yeah.
And the bigger bases and some adjustments like that have brought back the speed element in the game. And then I think, at the youth league level and high school level, there could be a little bit more of the power, intertwined a little bit.
Yeah,
it seems
I
like
would
they're
agree.
almost some programs are obsessed with just the small ball, just trying to scrape across runs. But you also have to think about who you have on your team, and
that's right.
You go with that. So it's not just one size fits all. If you got some guys that was a pop, let them swing the bat.
Right.
Don't hardly ever let them bunt. But then if you got guys that just simply have no pop or whatever, you got to utilize the bunt and bunt for a hit and do things like that. So I think the major league level, it seems like that it's turned that way because that's the guys that make the most money.
Yeah.
If you hit 50 bombs, doesn't matter if you hit 190 or not, you're making the big bucks. So that's why they've started to go that route. If that's what's making me the $50 million or $500 million, then I'm going to try to hit home runs now instead of just hitting, 280, a solid 280 with 10 home runs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I see as a difference is how freaking hard people are throwing.
They are. Every single pitcher, you're not losing anything when you bring the next guy in.
Yeah.
Unlike when I played, your starter and your closer were your guys.
Yeah.
And then you just try to bridge the gap with your other guys.
Yeah.
And those were your guys that were coming in, just trying to get by, and keep your team within the game.
Yeah.
But now it's like you just ride your starter as long as you can ride them, and then you bring in the next guy and he's throwing even harder.
Yeah.
So you're not losing anything. So that's where it's kind of worked for the pitchers, but it's also worked against them because now there's no incentive to pitch 250 innings or 300. Nolan Ryan threw 326 innings one year and then 300 and something the next year. And I think last year the largest amount of innings thrown was barely over 200.
Oh, wow.
200 innings,
Wow.
He started 40 games one year, I think, and averaged 8 innings per start.
Wow.
320 innings in a season. That's just...
I saw Randy Johnson's numbers the other day. Dude, I remember as a kid watching that Mariners team.
Yeah.
With
with
him
Edgar
and Griffey.
Martinez.
Edgar Martinez. Nobody ever talks about people I talk to don't ever talk about Edgar Martinez.
He was such a great hitter.
Yeah, man. I think
Jay Buhner.
Yeah. Alex Rodriguez was on that team.
Alex Rodriguez.
Man, did you play against those guys?
I think Cano was maybe a rookie, wasn't he?
I don't know if Cano would have been in that group or not. Is he that same age?
He's He's still playing in Mexico right now, but
Is he?
yeah, I think he might have been maybe a rookie or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Man, that was back when I really remember starting to watch baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was N64 days, which I don't know if you ever played video games, but call me Junior, man. There was a Ken Griffey Jr. N64 game, and I picked the Mariners every time because they were insane. And then I feel like I kind of fell out a little bit until the steroid era. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, man, I watched Long Ball Summer. Have you watched that?
I have not.
You need to check it out. It's the story. It's the story that follows the home run race with McGuire and Sosa. It brought me back, man. That is when I remember loving the game. But you got to think about it from the perspective of a kid that's, just learning about it and stuff like that. Like, I didn't know what steroids was, obviously. And, you're watching these guys hit the ball 450 foot and massive dudes. It brought me back. I remember going to games. I loved Mark McGuire. I still like him. I remember watching diligently as a kid, watching every single game, hoping that he was going to break the record that game. I remember watching TV the night that he broke the record. I was there when he hit 60. So it's just, I'm not convinced that a lot of kids love the game like that. But like, I lost it for a while, like for a brief spell, and then that stuff happened and it brought me back. But now you look at modern day, Judge just did the same thing. So I have to hope that whole thing brought some kids in, because I feel like the game is extraordinary right now. I mean, we're seeing generational talents like Shohei and
to be able to pitch and hit
Yes.
at that level, I can't think of anybody that's ever done that. Babe Ruth was a pitcher to start.
Yeah.
And then he transitioned to be a hitter. But to be able to be that skilled at both pitching and hitting, and to do what he's doing, I don't. And most of your old time players will agree that he's the most talented player that they've ever seen.
And a physical specimen, really.
Yep.
I mean, he is massive.
He is.
I didn't realize how big he really was, and I get that a lot of people saying, "Well, I don't want him to get too big." Listen, he's not going to be bigger than Chapman. He's not going to be bigger than Stanton. He's not. Listen, as long as you stay flexible and you stay mobile, get as big and strong and fast as you can possibly get. Just do it the right way, And I think, a lot of times, and I want you to kind of weigh in on this, when you start talking about, okay, well, how can I throw harder? I've always felt like the best way to build velocity is from the ground up. Same way you build power as a hitter. If the feet aren't good, nothing else is going to be ready.
It's like building a house,
Right.
It doesn't do you good. That's what my dad did for a living. He built houses. So without a good foundation, it doesn't do any good if all the appliances and the trim and everything that goes inside, it's going to crumble.
Yeah.
So, you build a strong throwing base, your legs, of course, just a solid throwing program. That's the one thing that the biggest change from high school to college was our throwing program.
Yeah.
I was probably throwing for 5 minutes maybe to get loose, in high school. I get to college and our throwing program is 15 to 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
And you talk about just wore out after the first week. I was like, good Lord, are we ever going to stop throwing?
Yeah.
But then by the end of the month, man, my arm's a lot stronger.
Yeah.
I never was used to throwing that much. And that's where it all starts, just like if you can throw, you can pitch.
Yeah.
If you can throw a baseball, then you can pitch. And a lot of guys, can throw really well from the outfield, and then they get to the mound, though, and they don't have the same stuff. And you're wondering what's going on. Well, they're trying to do something different.
Yeah.
Instead of just doing what they did from the outfield with that same momentum, try to get that and translate it to the mound. So don't feel like you have to do all these special things on the mound to attain the same, velo that you've got from the outfield. So
yeah. I think something you kind of were talking about there, with with kids now, I think that it's important, and hopefully you get asked this quite a bit, but let's talk about pitch count, right? Mm-hmm. So, talking about pitching and making sure you can do it kind of for the long haul. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the pitch counts? Because now, I mean, I feel like they're pretty fair, mm-hmm. to be honest with you. Now, and I think when I played, man, I don't even think there were pitch counts.
I was telling somebody a story today that when I was in middle school, I was playing still rec league, and we were playing at Lone Oak, and it was the championship night. Everybody's championship game was that night. It was right before I think the day before school started, and everybody's game had finished, but ours was still going on. We were in the 12th inning, and we were playing Melbourne. My team was from Reidland, and we played 12 innings. And the kid for them, I pitched the whole game.
Oh,
12 innings. And somebody said, "Do you remember what your arm felt like the next day?" I said, "I remember going to school, and my pitching elbow was like a softball.
Yeah,
it was that swollen.
Yeah,
and today that would be probably child abuse.
Yeah,
yeah,
but for real.
But the thing is, we just didn't know those things back then. You just threw, and it's nobody's fault. But now, I love travel ball. It's great. The competition, the seriousness about it, but the structure's kind of tough.
Yeah.
Especially on pitchers and catchers.
Yes.
When you play 5 games in a weekend, most teams don't carry but 5 or 6 pitchers.
Yeah.
So you're asking an awful lot.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I stress is it's better to just let a kid pitch his game. Let him throw us 4 or 5 innings instead of maybe stopping him after 3 or 4 at 60 pitches and then bring him back the next day.
Yeah.
If you throw 50 or 60 pitches, you don't need to pitch the next day. Put them at first or DH them or set them, especially the rest of that day, because that's where you're really magnifying your chances of an injury.
Yeah.
If you're throwing, it's just like you and I. If we go in, we're going to do bench today. I'm going to lift 4 sets of 12 reps or whatever, and then I'm going to go home, shower, eat, and then I'm going to come back later and do it again.
Yeah.
Your muscles are they're broken down.
Yeah.
And they're trying to rebuild, and then you're disrupting that process. And if you do that, you might get away with it for a weekend or 2 or whatever, but over the course of a long period of time, it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, and I think at least the youth coaches that I have kind of immediate contact with do a good job.
Yep.
And I watch Game Changer religiously. Mm-hmm. I mean, so having around about 10 teams, you can only imagine what my Game Changer and Group Me is like. But I'm watching Group Me one time, and I'm coaching my daughter's softball team, 16U softball, and we're in Cape Girardeau. Well, I'm watching. I can't remember if it was like our 10 or 11U team. And I think actually at the time it was our 11U team. And I'm watching this pitch count, and I'm like, it's getting high.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting high.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, man. So it gets to like 80.
Mm-hmm.
And so I text the coach. Well, he's obviously on the field, right?
Yeah.
So I text him again, because he's still in. And finally, he calls me after. He's like, "We forgot to change the pitcher out." He's like, "That wasn't the same kid. We just."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I'm like, I got a little bit concerned because this kid ended up at 125 pitches or something like that. He's like, "No." Yeah. He's like, "We actually had 3 other pitchers, But I think as long as people use common sense mm-hmm. and just understand that mm-hmm. the body takes time to recover, you're not gonna hurt them. But just take care of them, and it's really the same way in college and in high school and stuff like that. And, I remember a couple years ago, we were going into the regional, it would have been the regional championship game against McCracken. It was my first year there. And Evan threw, I think maybe game 1 or game 2. Mm-hmm. And he threw 94 pitches, which I'm uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. Full disclosure, mm-hmm. I'm uncomfortable once they get to 90. Mm-hmm. And anyways, but he did good. He threw a great game, threw a gem. Well, we get through that, we win that game, and then we start this rain delay cycle, and we lose one day to rain. Well, then we're about to lose another one to rain. Well, we're approaching, I think it was 3 days rest, where legally, whatever the pitch count was, he could have thrown. And I remember having that conversation. I'm like, I'm not comfortable. Even if we play, I'm not comfortable with you throwing. He's like, I'm good,
Yeah.
But
The competitor wants you to,
and you love
go.
that. You love it.
Yep.
But he wanted the ball. Everybody wanted him to have the ball. It ended up happening to where we played the day before it would have ever even came into play anyways. But I'm telling you, man, had that day came around, it would have probably been a fight to keep him off the mound. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to have to reel guys back. But, I think where you run into trouble with pitch count, man, is when you get to these bigger programs that, you've got a kid throwing for his primary team on Friday night, and then a team's trying to pick him up to come throw on Saturday night, and then a team's coming in to throw another one on Sunday. And there is a national travel ball organization. And obviously, I'm not going to talk about them. But whenever I was with baseball youth, and I tell people all the time, I think one of the interesting perspectives that I have is I've seen the good and the bad in travel ball. This was the bad. This national director of this team is talking about how he flies these kids in. And I'm just like, man, like you're paying $2,500 to fly this kid in that just threw on Friday night to throw for your championship game on Saturday night when he probably has thrown 150 pitches already. Yep. It's like the focus isn't on the development of that kid. The focus is on the trophy that you're the $6 trophy that you're going to put in your facility.
Yeah, which in 5 more years you're not going to remember,
right,
who you played or what happened that weekend. So.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just, as long as you know what you're doing and you take care of them, you're good. But
you have to take, every now and then, as a coach, a good coach is going to take a loss, just to save some arms. And, that's where I think your focus, you got to have the eye on the big picture, the long term. And it's hard. It really is, because I'm like everybody else, too. I want, to go for the win right now.
Right.
But you've got to look, into the future and see, what am I doing right now that might cost him a chance to go play somewhere else down the road.
Man, I remember we were at Reidland Lake. It was a conference conference tournament, and had 2 dudes going at it. I'm talking like it was a battle. And the coach for the one team, the kid was getting, I think he was at 105 pitches, and our guy was at 90. Mm-hmm. And I think we went into the 8th inning or something. I pulled my guy. He left his guy in. He ends up beating us. Mm-hmm. And I remember the only way I could rationalize it to my assistant coach, my pitching coach, I'm like, well, at least we took care of our guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, it sucked, man, because we lost a conference game.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and this is something I'm telling everybody I talk to now, you are only as good as your bullpen.
I remember in the minor leagues with the Yankees, being one time I had a game where I had like 1 out to go or 2 outs to go, and I had a shutout. And our pitch limit was 105. And I remember them pulling me. And they said, we don't care about this game. It's are you going to be able to help us when we need you? So they sacrifice wins, in the minor leagues for development.
Yeah, and you have to, especially with youth.
Yep.
What about off speed? What do you typically tell your kids for off speed stuff?
Well, off speed's fine, but you just don't want to fall in love with those pitches early. You should be building everything off your fastball.
Yeah.
So usually the first year pitching, it's fastballs only. Until you show me a good life on your fastball and you're around the strike zone with it, there's no need to add another pitch, because that's just going to. I remember Billy Connors was our roving pitching instructor with the Yankees. He was Greg Maddox's pitching coach when Maddox was with the Cubs. And he said, quit trying to be the jack of all trades and just be the master of a few.
Yeah.
Meaning, you don't need 5 or 6 pitches to pitch in the major leagues.
Yeah.
And I've got kids that want to, they say, you want to see my knuckle curve and you want to see my slider and fork ball and stuff like that. So can you throw your fastball for a strike yet?
Right.
Well, then why are you're just farther than that, down the road.
Yeah.
So learn your fastball, develop it, get it over the plate, change up,
Yeah.
when you need it. And I try to cover, not only how to throw it, what you're trying to do with it, but when to use it. It's just as important. You could throw a great changeup, but throw it at the wrong point to where the guy crushes it.
Yeah.
And so I stress looking for, tendencies in hitter swings.
Yeah.
Was he all over that fastball? You probably don't need to throw it again. If he jacked it in the parking lot, he was, a foot out in front of it, then I would probably go off speed next pitch.
Yeah.
If you can't catch up to your fastball, you're doing him a favor by slowing it down for him. So, most of the time I ask them, when would you throw this? When would you throw that? And they usually say a count.
Yeah.
And I go, counts don't necessarily dictate what you throw.
Right.
Hitters and situations, if you got runners on, you want to think about trying to roll a double play ball or something hit to the left side of the infield. So you make choices depending on that instead of just the count. So, but establish your fastball, and then usually a changeup, and then the third pitch usually is a two-seam fastball, something that moves.
Yeah.
And then finally your curve or slider or whatever you throw, and that's usually around high school age, or it just depends. It's not the same for everybody.
Right.
So just as long as you throw it correctly, you shouldn't hurt yourself. They've come out with more and more studies showing that off-speed pitches are actually easier on your arms than fastballs.
Really?
Because on the fastball, you do have that wrist snap, and on a curveball or slider, you don't violently twist your wrist.
Yeah.
You lock those in, and then that way you have no rotation in your elbow.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you fall in love with it, then your fastball is going to stall out and not develop. So you always want to keep your fastball the priority.
I know as a hitter, change-ups were my kryptonite. I got to where...
Good changeup is, if not better, as good as than a curve.
Yeah, because a lot of times the release is fat wrist, right? So like if you start talking, fat wrist, skinny wrist, right?
Right.
Because fastball you're here, changeup you're here, curveball you're there, right?
Right.
So if that is your window where you're looking, the changeup is deceptive, man. And I remember a lefty with a good changeup.
Fading
Lights
away
out.
from your swing.
Lights out.
There's a pitcher that pitched at McCracken and went to Louisville.
Luke Seed.
He has the nastiest changeup. I remember
love that kid, man.
Jim Grief was talking about. He said he saw him pitch, I think at Logan, and he said Luke could actually tell the hitter. He could probably say, "Here it comes," and they still wouldn't hit it.
Gross.
Because it was just that
They had-
onside fade.
Did you see them play last year?
I did not.
They had another one, Jacob Ealing. He's going to.
I know Jacob.
Or not Jacob. Caleb.
Caleb.
Yeah, his
little
brother.
Yep.
Yeah, he had a good changeup. So Seed, I actually recruited at Ren Lake. Man, thought I got him. I think I might have told this story. Thought I had him. He calls me, commits to Logan. I'm like, oh my god, dude, come on.
His numbers at Logan were just sick.
Dude, he was pitcher. I think he was pitcher of the year.
He had something like at one point 60 innings and like 110 strikeouts or something like that.
Super great kid though.
He is.
Great family.
Yep.
But man, I thought I had him.
Yep.
But
he had that Vulcan, like he was throwing a traditional circle, and I think we went a little bit wider with these two.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of guys are throwing today is the Vulcan change.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a split change.
Yeah.
And it gets you a little bit more action, a little bit less rotation. So it's like a split change.
Yeah.
And it just has that nasty fade back to your arm side.
So the split finger fastball, 2 fingers, Vulcan changes.
These two, and this is what I stress on the changeup. There's so many different grips. I've seen, Trevor Hoffman held his. I got a ball here. Held his like that.
Oh my gosh.
He threw it like that, something like that. And then you've got the traditional circle change like that. Well, most kids' hands are not big enough to throw the traditional circle change because then it's almost off their hand like that. It slips out. So I tell them, just focus on these 2 fingers. These 2 fingers throw the changeup.
Yeah.
Your middle and your ring finger. Okay? So position those on the ball, and then just wherever those others want to rest, just let them rest.
Yeah.
Because when you're releasing it, what you want is that action right there, that pronation.
Yeah.
To get the ball to spin like this, and that fades away.
Yeah.
So, that's what I stress on that pitch is just these 2 fingers. These 2 combined versus these 2 are weaker. Yeah. So you can't pull back on the seams as violently. So that's what takes the speed off the changeup. Yeah. Because you have very little strength in your ring finger.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think what little I did pitch when I was a youth player was I threw a circle changeup, and it was a version of. You know what I mean? Like it was, like you said, my little hand, man.
Do you know that when I was playing, this is how long ago this was when I was 8 years old, is we had an 8.5-inch ball.
Really?
Yeah. So they had like an atom ball, a bantam ball for all the divisions. But now they use a 9-inch baseball from the very first year. So the size of the baseball is where a lot of kids are having trouble gripping it with 2 fingers. They have to go with 3.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go, in football they give them a junior size football, I think.
Yeah.
Do they not?
I think they do. Yeah.
And then
I think all of them are tapered.
Right, and basketball, I think they use a junior size basketball, if I'm not correct.
Yeah.
So maybe you can shoot the same way you'll shoot. You see all these kids with a regular size basketball shoot from their hip.
Yeah.
And I guess throwing an adult size football, you would probably throw from right here. You couldn't get your arm up and out away from your body. Well, in baseball, that's the one sport that if you don't throw the ball, correctly, you could really screw yourself up.
Yes.
So that's where I think, they need to go back to the smaller baseball to fit the kids' hands.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep.
I knew in T-ball that the ball was squishy.
Yeah, you're right. They do.
But even in softball, you're talking about that. Even in softball, it changes.
I cannot throw a 12-inch softball. I don't feel right with 2 fingers.
Yeah.
I have to get real wide. I have to put my thumb up on the side some. And that's the way you see a lot of kids grip the ball because their hands are so small. They're gripping it like that.
Yeah.
They're choking it. Because if they try to hold it like this, it's slipping out of their hand.
Man, that's a good point. And I wonder if they went away from that just because it's a smaller ball.
I don't know what happened. It's probably money related. That it just makes more sense. They don't have to worry about. They just ship out all the dozens of baseballs. But
I know that the younger girls are 8-inch softballs, and then it goes up to 10 and then it goes to 11
and then 12.
Yeah. And so it's crazy that I did not realize that baseball tapered like that.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see how it would be very beneficial, especially at the younger ages pitching.
Yep.
Something you kind of talked about there. So, throwing correctly. You said that a few times, and I think that it's, talking about arm action and things like that. You'll watch. Man, I remember the Tommy Nansky videos. You remember those? Back when I was a kid, man. It was boom,
and point the
boom,
glove, yeah,
boom,
yeah.
So what do you typically teach? Obviously, you've talked about you kind of let the kids move how they move and stuff like that. But if you're trying to quote unquote clean up a kid's arm action, what does that look like?
Well, you don't give your arm a chance to do something that it doesn't need to do. So it's kind of like the hitters with swinging up against close to something like a net or whatever.
Yeah.
Any wasted motion where you're dumping the barrel too soon or casting out, you hit the net.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with a pitcher. If I stand up against a wall, maybe like that's 8 inches or so behind me, if I get my arm started too soon, I'm going to hit the wall. But if I let my body move a little bit first and then break out of my glove, then my arm will stay inside the plane of my back foot.
Yeah.
If I videotape a pitcher from the side view, the one thing that I just don't want to see is the arm break the plane of the rubber.
Yeah.
Because then he's breaking too soon, and then he's carrying everything with his stride.
Yeah.
Instead of pulling apart.
Okay.
See, you want that rubber band effect. So you want your body moving forward a little bit before the arm breaks, so that you reach the pinnacle, the extreme of both ends at the right point.
Yeah.
But most kids, what I see them throw, they tend to rock back, take the ball out, and then they carry everything forward together.
Yeah.
So they're not pulling anything apart. They're not getting that separation between their shoulders and their hips.
Yeah. That makes sense. So one of the things that I have seen, probably on X, honestly, or Twitter, but some people will teach to when they break the hands to break down. Some will teach kind of a contraction with the scap. So what do you like?
It doesn't matter. Somebody that just got selected to the Hall of Fame, Billy Wagner.
Yeah.
If you watched him throw, he comes straight out and back, just like that. I mean, straight to the point. If your delivery is fast, then that's probably the best arm action for you.
Yeah.
Break high and just get to the point.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like an infielder.
Yeah.
All right. If your delivery is slower, longer stride, then you probably are going to come down more out of the glove.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's not just, it all depends.
Yeah.
It should meet how you're using your body.
Yeah.
Is what type of arm action probably is going to work best for you.
Yeah. So. I think there's just always a lot of critics and stuff just on, this is the right way, this is the wrong way.
And I was probably guilty of that when I first started teaching, but then you learn. You just say, what works for one, because you see all these big leaguers. Like I remember this one guy, I can't remember his name, but he was for the Twins. Maybe Corey Koski or somebody like that he went to a shorter arm path and picked up like 3 or 4 miles per hour on his fastball.
So then everybody should do it.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I think I'll stand on my head. Because it works for him.
Yeah.
But no, you just got to, tinker with things. That's the thing, is experiment. I tell my kids that one thing that's very underrated is just keep a ball with you.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in the minor league, sometimes we'd travel and maybe we'd get rained out for 3 days straight. And back then, you didn't have an indoor facility anywhere to go and throw.
Yeah.
You just stayed in your hotel room. Well, what if you were a reliever or whatever, and then you didn't throw for 3 days, and then the next day we play and you get in the game? You're so accustomed to holding the ball in your hand.
Yeah.
Now that ball feels a little weird.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else, like a surgeon and his scalpel or a sharpshooter and his gun. I use those analogies all the time.
Yes.
The more you handle it, the more you're going to feel comfortable. I don't want to go under the knife with a surgeon who hadn't operated on somebody in a year.
Yeah.
I want them to have done some surgeries a little bit before I get to them.
Yeah.
So that's where go back and forth between your grips over and over. Spin the ball around your hand.
Yeah.
It should feel like it's a part of you.
Yeah.
I feel naked without a ball or a cap on.
That's a great point, man. I think as a hitter, this is weird, but I used to sleep with my bat.
No.
Like when I'd get a new bat, man, I know that's
weird.
It is weird. It is weird, but I used to sleep with my glove. I used to sleep with my
understand.
glove too because I'm an odd dude, man. When it comes to that sort of stuff, and I think anybody that is obsessed with something,
better with a cap on.
Yeah, I do too.
I love going to college because when in college you can wear caps in class.
Yeah, I think, I would do weird things that made me feel close with the things that I used the most. Mm-hmm. And at that point in my life, I used my glove and I used my bat the most. Mm-hmm. And I think, at the end of the day, Ken, I think it comes back to just taking pride in what you do. Mm-hmm. I'm a pitcher. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the best at whatever I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I'm a hitter. I'm going to feel as close. I used to name them. Dude, I was a weirdo. I'm telling you. But I think at the end of the day, it's just, that is a valuable thing to do, is just be used to using the ball, mm-hmm. Be used to swinging the bat. And yeah, man, I actually love that. So when I remember there was a period at Reidland Lake when we were really we were diving into mechanics deeply. And there was a kid that was very raw, and we were trying to talk to him about how the sequencing in your swing. And this kid, he was bought into it. Like, he was the kid that you could really break down in slow motion and talk to him about the sequencing in your swing and how the heel raises, the knee engages, the hip engages, and then the hands, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you're teaching a kid about hitting. A lot of times I will say, get the hands out, right? Or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. You figure out what verbal cues to say to get a kid in a certain point. But for this guy, we were talking to him because he would get real far out in front. So we were talking about him about the sequencing in his swing and that sort of stuff. Well, they're grocery shopping one night, him and his roommates, and he disappears. And they see him in the frozen food section, and he's looking at himself in the reflection, and he's got his hands back like this, and he's like turning his hips, mm-hmm. but he's keeping his hands mm-hmm. back, right? So he's turning his hips, but he's keeping his hands back. And they're like, TJ, what are you doing, man? He's like, just working, and that kid ends up getting it and ends up killing the ball, but it's funny because it's the most, from the outside looking in, it can look weird.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're taking what you do and you're trying to be the absolute best at it.
That reminds me of the scene in Bull Durham where Kevin Costner walks by a trash can and he pulls out, one of those cardboard things that like wrapping paper comes in like a tube. Yeah. And then he's practicing his swing in the window. Yep.
Yeah. So something you said there, the jack of all trades, right?
Right.
So multi-sport athletes, right?
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think a young athlete should be playing multiple sports? Do you think that they should focus on one? What do you think?
Okay, I definitely think being versatile is important, whether it's playing a team sport or just picking up another activity.
Yeah.
I think that's what matters. I think a lot of people think, well, he's got to play basketball, football, baseball, soccer. No, just do something that's going to assist you, that's going to, help you in the sport that maybe you love the most.
Yeah.
So I played basketball as well as baseball, and my love wasn't for basketball. It was obviously for baseball, but it was good for me because it hit different muscle groups. It made me a better athlete.
Right.
So I love swimming, especially for pitchers, swimming, any type of body control, martial arts, yoga. Those are activities that are going to accommodate you, in certain movements in your sport.
Yeah.
So it's a supplement,
Yes.
for your sport. So don't feel like you have to be the best at each one of them, but, just keep from doing the same stale movements over and over.
Yeah.
It helps you keep your body fresh and like I said, active.
Yeah,
So.
I agree 100%. I think every sport teaches you a different skill set. So just speaking from like a male athlete perspective, I do like when a kid plays football. I like when a kid plays basketball, especially younger. Now, as they get older, I think
You're going to narrow it down.
Yeah, I think for sure. But man, early in their development when they're learning. I can't tell you how many times I've talked about it, hinging your hips when you're hitting and things like that, and they don't know what that means. And then I say, have you ever played basketball? And if they say, yeah, how do you play defense? And the first thing they do is they push their butt back, right? Boom, stay there. Okay. And I show them, you see how your hips are hinged right there? That is what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about hinging your hips, you're putting yourself in an athletic position and you're kind of in slot and you can move better, right? You can move more efficiently. If you don't play basketball, you don't know that, right? I think football gives you aggression. I think it gives you toughness. I think it gives you mental toughness because those kids typically, athletically, are very disciplined. You have to be. And, that's the only sport where somebody's literally trying to hit you as hard as you possibly can. So a lot of times those kids that play those sports early are tougher. Not always, but sometimes that's the case. Soccer kids, usually very athletic. They're very good, and basketball too. They're very good laterally. They're good accelerating forward and backward. They can jump, all that sort of stuff. I think it's all beneficial. And I think baseball, of all sports, you can get by early with not being as athletic.
Absolutely.
But as you get older, I do think that overall athleticism, you look at your bigger guys like CC Sabathia, guarantee you that guy can school you in basketball. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you look at his body and you're like, oh, he's a little bit bigger. No, I bet you that dude's still an athlete. He's probably fast. I remember reading a study about a pitcher's 10-yard time and how that compares to velocity.
There's 3 factors that they correlated to velocity.
Yeah.
And they tested this in spring training on us, is grip strength.
Yep.
And then vertical.
Yep.
And then 60.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So my vertical, not great. My 60, not great. My grip strength was pretty good.
That's good.
That saved me.
Yeah.
That saved me, but I was never fast. And I couldn't jump off 2 feet really well. I could jump off 1. I could dunk in high school, but only off 1 foot. I could not jump off 2 feet.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I definitely, and just looking at the guys I've coached, it's very applicable.
Yeah.
Talking the most recent, Reese could probably squat a house, Oakley or Evan, same way, and I've had the opportunity to coach a lot of good athletes at both the high school and the college level, and it's very applicable. Sometimes you'll have a kid that's a little less athletic that might throw harder, that might throw hard, but by probability, your more athletic kids typically can generate more force quickly, which translates directly.
And it gives you a little more margin for error.
Yeah.
The athleticism will make up for other areas that you're not so great at. Just like compared to UK basketball it was in the past, they were very athletic.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be more athletic than UK. They're not going to be as tall or fast and everything. And they won a lot of games just on that.
Yeah.
Just because they beat the ball, get to the ball quicker than the other team.
Yeah.
But they didn't shoot too well though.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they still won a lot of games just because of their athleticism.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, man. I think one thing I do want to touch on.
Okay.
So you've been around this area for a long time. Mm-hmm. You've seen Region 1 sports, mm-hmm. Region 2 too, yeah. And I know you have kids coming from Hopkinsville. You mm-hmm. have kids coming from all over, mm-hmm. but you live in Region 1. Mm-hmm. So what do you feel like the state of Region 1 baseball is right now? Across the state, obviously. Yeah. Just what do you think?
Shoot, man. They're competing every year for the state tournament. So,
yeah.
For our area, for Western Kentucky, the Purchase area, we produce a lot of talent.
Yes.
For the population that we have. You see what goes on when the travel teams go and play in Nashville and Memphis and places like that.
Yeah.
And they're runner-up or winning just about every weekend.
Yeah.
So, that goes back to the coaches that are around here, whether it's the youth league, high school, or what we're doing. So, that's just it's wonderful that, this area is represented that well. So.
Yeah. I think it's, I'm seeing it from a different perspective now, obviously, but man, I used to love recruiting this area. The kids coming out of this area, they're different. And I say that in a very positive way. They're good kids. They come from great families. Mm-hmm. They're blue collar.
They are.
They're talented.
Mm-hmm.
Athletic.
And this is supposed to be a basketball state.
Yeah.
But look at the baseball talent that this area produces.
Who's some of the bigger kids that people might know that you have worked with from time to time that's either done now, maybe still playing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had 3 reach the major leagues. Daniel Webb.
Yeah.
Definitely Mike Broadway.
Yeah.
And then latest is Easton McGee.
Yeah.
So those 3 guys, big right-handed pitchers, Daniel, man, his story was really unique.
Yeah.
And when he was drafted, he signed with the Blue Jays, and he had a kind of a rough start. He was like 1-7 in single A, but in the offseason, he was traded to the White Sox.
Yeah.
And they stuck him in the bullpen, and he started off in A-ball. And he went on a roll with 11 or 12 games, something like that, appearances, and I don't think he gave up but like 1 run over those appearances.
Yeah.
They moved him to Double-A, and he did the same. And by the All-Star break, they moved him to Triple-A, and then he went on a tear there and got 12 or 13 appearances with earned run here or there. And at the end of the season, he was in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And then he did well for 3 years. He put up really good numbers.
Yeah.
And, what a kid.
Yeah.
What a tough kid. In the state tournament game, I remember he pitched with a broken foot in the state championship game for Heath.
Yeah.
And just a tough guy, tough kid.
Man, so it gives me goosebumps because I grew up with Daniel. I only played with him for a couple years, but his dad and my dad were good friends. Mm-hmm. I played stormball with him. And, a lot of people remembers guys that they played with and against. And obviously I remember my teammates, but Daniel was without a doubt the best player that I've ever played with.
He could have
or
hit
against.
2 if he wanted to.
Man.
I think he hit 12 bombs his senior year at Heath.
Hey, he was incredible. And you talk about being a tough kid. I've never met anybody with as much grit as that guy. And I remember when that story about him throwing with a broken foot, I believe it with 100% of my being.
Yep.
I mean, that kid, I think he would have pitched with a broken leg.
Probably so.
And his dad, I still talk to his dad from time to time, and man.
That's where he got it from, too.
Oh, Champ is...
I remember Champ, we had a baseball session. He said, give me the latest time on Saturday at your place because I want to rent out your cage for another hour after that. And he would throw to Daniel for that full hour.
Yeah.
I bet he threw 300 pitches. Yeah. And I told Daniel, Daniel, you need to be thankful for your dad because he really, would do anything, for you to see that you got to where you wanted to go. And
he did,
that's what
man.
happened.
His dad was one of the most intense parents that I've ever been around.
He tells it like it is, and,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
And I think that's why him and my dad got along so well, because their expectation of their kids was very high. And if they ever fell short, they would let you know. And I think, that I see a lot of that myself now. And, I saw Champ at the regional tournament last year. And, man, I chopped it up with him for probably 45 minutes. And I was just like, man, I remember why I love this guy. Like he is just
nonsense.
Yeah. He told me, he said, hey, if you ever need me to come throw BP, I still got it.
I'm sure he does. I wouldn't want to get in there on him, I don't think.
I don't know if you watched him throw to Daniel the day that he rented the cage, but he threw, man, when he threw BP, when Champ Webb was going to throw BP at practice, we were all like, oh my gosh. Like he's going to throw as hard as he can.
Yep.
And he
had Daniel swinging like a 36-inch wood bat. You
Yeah.
know? I think it had like 6 rolls of tape on it.
Yeah.
And he was just hammering balls the whole time.
Do you remember the old Stormfield?
Oh yeah, Jetta Raper Field.
Yeah. So when we were 12, I think we were 12, because I think that's when I started playing storm ball. We were practicing on that field. Daniel, as a 12-year-old, short hopped the softball field that runs along the parking lot. So just think about that shot.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, it was insane, man. And then I remember he out of high school, I think he signed at UK. And then he went to Meridian, or he was going to go to Meridian Community College, which is a powerhouse.
He went to Northwest Florida State.
Yes.
That's where he ended up going.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I remember I think I was maybe in Indianapolis, and we're at B-Dubs. Where I'm just out with my buddies. Look up on the TV.
He's pitching.
There's old Daniel.
I got to see him pitch at Busch Stadium.
Yeah.
Yep. I went up and saw him throw, and he shut him down for like 2 innings.
Yeah.
His first batter, by the way, he faced in the big leagues. Guess who it was?
Jeter. Yep.
And I was following it on game day, and I thought, man, this is a small world.
Yeah.
He's facing my former teammate.
Yeah.
And he's pumping 99, 100.
Yeah.
He walked him. He got to a 3-2 count and walked him, but my gosh, what a feeling that was.
Yeah.
I was just, my heart was racing for him while I was watching it.
Oh, man, he actually got my mom and I tickets to go watch him in Chicago at the White. That's the only game I've ever been to at the White Sox Stadium. And dude, I saw him after the game.
Just like a normal dude.
Never would have thought anything. I mean, never would have thought he's
probably had camo on.
Yeah, dude. He's like, got a new truck.
Yeah.
Had like a F-250. Like, just, the dudes beside him's got like a Mercedes or whatever. He's just got him an old truck.
Got his boots
It's
on.
brand new, but
Cowboy boots, blue jeans.
Yeah. But man, great dude. I'm so glad that you brought him up, man, because he was a stud and just a great guy.
He threw 85 when he was a freshman. I remember he was, he was wild. But, man, he threw hard, and you knew it was there.
Yeah.
And he was one, though, that threw like 7 pitches.
Yeah.
And I go, Daniel, who's hit your fastball up to this point? He goes, nobody. I go, then why do you need 7 pitches?
Yeah, but he could throw them.
Yeah, he could throw them.
Hey, I remember, so we roll into Heath, and it's like a big game, and Daniel's pitching. And I like I said, I've known him, so I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna try to shove one down my throat, right? So I'm geared up, I'm locked in, I'm gonna hit a fastball, I'm gonna hit a 92-mile-an-hour fastball or whatever it was at that time. Throws me 3 knuckleballs in the dirt. I swing at all 3 of them, and I look at him as I'm walking back to the dugout, and he's just laughing at me. I'm like, dude, that's tough. That is tough. But I mean, you talk about that Heath group, man. He was at Heath with both the Wright brothers with Tilford. I mean, God. That group was crazy, and they all played post 31. And I think Daniel bounced around on some travel stuff at that time.
Tilford pitched at UK, was drafted by the Rockies.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Chad Wright.
Yeah.
Right. Brock Wright.
Yeah.
Yep.
As
a good bunch.
As a freshman, we were playing Legion ball. It's crazy, dude, because I forget about these stories until I start hearing the names. But we were playing at Mike Miller, and I think it was like one of my first Legion games for Senior Legion. And Tilford, I think, was throwing. And I I hit one out on him, which I just lucked into. Like, I'm not going to spin it. I just threw my bat because I knew he was going to throw me a fastball, and I hit it.
Yeah.
But then, like, later in that game.
You threw it where you swung, huh?
Right. But then, like, later in that game, I hit another one. I hit one that, was it Brock or Chad that was the center fielder? It was Chad. Went over the fence, catches this ball, brings it back.
He's like a Mac Trout,
dude,
wasn't he?
It was insane. Yep. That's a great comparison, actually. He was insane. And then they had other guys. They had like Eric Warren, who I played with at Reidland Lake. They had the Goins boy, the little soft lefty. So you got Clint Tilford and Daniel Webb, both low mid 90s guys, and then JC Goins, I think it was, like a soft lefty, and just carved. So I mean, that's little bitty Heath. So it's crazy, man. And that now, all those schools came together.
Yeah. Yep.
So a couple of my roommates in college my freshman year were at Lone Oak during that time frame. So, it was Region 1 was good then, it's good now, man. I'm thankful to be coaching in it. I'm thankful for guys like you. And I've never told you this. We've had several conversations, but you are an inspiration to me.
Man.
Because I came back and I didn't know what I was gonna do.
I remember our conversations though when you were at Reidland Lake.
Yeah,
we would text each other back and forth.
Yeah,
you're like, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about that guy?
Yeah. And I think when I came back, I remember somebody said to me like, "Oh, you're gonna compete against Kent?" I'm like, No, that is not the case at all.
There's plenty to go around for
like
everybody.
there are so many kids that want want to be better.
3 of my former students are teaching now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're coaching. Like the Ford brothers both came to me when they were at Lone Oak.
Yeah.
And then you got Hunter Burge at Carlisle. So Jonah Brandon, Callaway. Those are all my former students. And I'm like, man, that's what it's all about.
That's 100%, man.
Hand it down.
Yeah.
Because, some point we're not going to be here anymore.
That's right.
So
that's right.
You've got to have some type of legacy somehow.
100% agree, man. And that's, at the end of the day, I think everything that I've tried to do here, it's just to provide opportunities for kids that I wish that I would have really had growing up, and like, I think you were the only show in town. Scott Chambers did some stuff for a while.
In Benton. Yeah, he did it.
And he did that for a while. I never went to his building, I don't think, but I know people that did. And and then like
Phil Roof was actually the one that told me. He said he recommended. I was in spring training with him one year, and I didn't make the club, and I was probably on my way out of the game, and he said, "You ever think about doing something like that?"
Yeah.
He goes, "I got buddies that do that at their hometown, and they do really well." He goes, "I think you'd be pretty good at that." And that planted a seed, and so I did it. I was just planning on doing it in my off season.
Yeah.
I was still playing at the time, but then it went so well that kind of made it easier for me to just say, you know what, my time's over as a player. So. And
I was actually talking about that with one of my best friends today. Because we were talking about when the game ends and how that is a lot more stressful than what a lot of people probably realize. And I said, yeah, man, like I struggled with figuring out who I was as a person. And you don't think about it, but like when you spend so much of your time around something and then that ends, you have to it's kind of like hitting the reset button. You gotta figure it out. And dude, I didn't go to a baseball game. I didn't watch baseball. I didn't do anything.
I can understand how some of these guys that play in long careers, and they retire when they're 40 or 42 or whatever, how they struggle.
Yeah.
And you don't understand unless you've done it
to
some degree.
Yeah.
It's part of you, and it's just like part of your life ends.
Yeah.
And,
it is.
And it's hard. It's it's where a lot of guys struggle to go back into the normal world, and pick up something new, you know.
And I think it all comes back really to what we're doing now. I genuinely feel like I didn't play pro ball, probably because I wasn't good enough. But at the time, I just think that God had a different purpose for me.
Yeah.
And I genuinely feel like it is what I'm doing right now, both coaching and just helping kids. And like you just said, passing it on, moving it along. Because at the end of the day, I want this academy or wherever we end up to still be here when I'm not, whether that's my kids running it.
Right.
My kids may not even like baseball or softball, but if they do, I want to make sure that they got everything they have to succeed.
Exactly. That's one thing I've been really blessed to be able. That's all I've done my whole life. I tell people all the time, I can barely change the oil in my car. I don't know anything about anything else.
Yeah.
Because and I got criticized a lot growing up because I didn't do a lot of the other things that my friends were. Oh, come on, Wally, let's go out and do this, do that. You don't play video games and you don't go golfing and stuff like that. And I go, because it takes away from what I'm trying to do, and I don't want any other distractions. So
well, and I think now, and I have to call her out. And I see your posts and stuff about your family and stuff, and I love it, man. Mm-hmm. I love it, and I feel like you've always kept that in the forefront. And I think it is a balance that you have to find, especially when you're super, super busy and stuff like that. And I've been so blessed and so thankful for my wife and for her to let me do this, because ultimately that's what it is.
This is the thing about that my wife and I are really good at is her passion is her horses.
Yeah.
Mine's baseball. And we have no problem with us going away from each other for a weekend or whatever and enjoy our thing. You got to have that. In a successful marriage, you've got to be able to respect the other person's, time for their passion.
Yeah.
My passion's baseball, hers is her horses, and we respect each other so much for that. So,
Yeah. Well, I've been very blessed with that, because I think, without her doing the things that she does and allowing me to do the things that I do, none of this would be possible. Mm-hmm. This podcast, the buildings, and I think she loves it too, and that helps. Mm-hmm. She's with me. Mm-hmm. She's helping me paint. We're doing stuff together, and I think a lot of the stuff in here are memories that we have made together. And my kids, my little girl has made paint strokes on some of these walls, and Abigail was the first one to hit in this building, and like, I love that stuff.
They'll never forget that stuff.
Yeah.
They'll never forget it.
Yeah. So yeah, man. Listen, I appreciate you coming in. Like I said, if you ever need anything from me, you got it. I'm confident that you've always got my back, and like I said, I can't say it enough, man. You're an inspiration. I look up to you, and I just hope that I can do this as long and as successful as you've been.
I hope so too. I think your chances are really good.
Well, I appreciate it, man. No problem. Appreciate it.